At Psych with Mike, we have a centralized location where all of our episodes are, and that's psychwithmike.com. But that's not the only way that you can get the show. The show is available pretty much anywhere that you download podcasts. So you can go to your preferred podcast provider and subscribe to Psych with Mike there. If you find one that we're not available on, please let us know here at the show, because I would love to correct that. But go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the show there. And while you're there, leave us a comment and rate us. That is so incredibly beneficial to the show, and we would really appreciate it. And if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
To dream.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan. I am here with apparently William Shakespeare.
I was just reciting something I learned in high school, which was 50-something years ago.
You just kind of started doing that.
20 lines out of Macbeth.
Yeah. I mean, actually,
you gave me the trigger.
I gave you the trigger. Yeah. And then you just started going.
Yeah, just started popping
into the soliloquy.
We used to soliloquy. I love that word. We used to have to do a lot more memorization in school than people have to do today. And I think it's a loss. I think it's a deficit. Training your mind to retain facts, I think, is a very important skill.
Well, I tell people all the time, it was like the tail end of when I was going to school. They were just about done doing this, but we used to have civics class, and civics class wasn't learning the government.
Civics class.
It was, you handed people a pencil and said, "May I have a pencil, please?" And then they handed you the pencil, and you had to say thank you.
Yeah, that was a class I took in high school called Human Relations. You have to learn how to introduce a man to a woman to a man, how to order in a restaurant, all the courtesy things.
What do you call that? Miss something's. Oh, anyway, that.
I'm sorry, you lost me.
Yeah, I lost myself because I had a flash of something that used to be called something like you would go to like a finishing school, and they would teach you all of those intricacies of social demeanor. Yeah.
Oh, I love the way you talk.
Yeah. But we don't do that anymore.
No, people don't have social demeanor anymore.
Well, because you have to be value free, and so if you're teaching somebody how to do this,
no, you don't. You cannot be value free.
Well, that's what people say.
We're all about proselytizing. If you go into teaching, you are teaching.
Well,
hello.
People say that everybody has a right to their own.
It used to fascinate me, and it was one of my negative viewpoints about teaching high school is they would never give me a key to the building or to all the rooms in the building. But because they didn't trust me, it was none of my business to go into the storeroom or somebody else's room, classroom. Every teacher had a key to their own room, and they were keyed differently. But there was a master key, and usually
every room in the high school was keyed. A different key?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
You leave your stuff in there.
I assumed they were all the same.
Well, people want to steal my lecture notes and use them. So I had to lock them up.
Yeah.
But the coaches would almost always have
the master
key because they'd be up there after hours and other people wouldn't be around. And they'd give them to kids, like go down to such and such and get some soda out of the teacher's lounge, what have you. And the janitorial staff would always have keys, master keys.
That makes sense.
For obvious reasons. Yes. But I would get myself in a little snit because I didn't have a master key. So
didn't you know a coach that would?
That's where I was going. I smoozed up to a coach and said, give me a master key so I can feel like I have quality and status. And I had one.
And then once you got the master key, what did you do with it?
Nothing.
I bet you've never ever once used it.
I used it for my own room.
I was going to say.
Instead of the key they gave me.
Right.
Because I'm oppositional.
Yeah.
Or if somebody was locked out, forgot their keys, lost them, I could help you with that because I want you to know that I have this. Would never give it to kids. I never explored the building. I didn't do anything like that. But it was a status.
Yeah, it was just all about having it.
Well, and we're all status seekers.
Even though we may, we may be in denial.
Yes.
But we all are.
Yeah.
So I sent you the article for today's topic, and I'm not sure that you liked it. But I'm projecting that, so I will ask the question. Did you not like the article that I sent you for today's topic?
I found it moderately interesting.
Okay.
But I didn't really, it didn't set my brain on fire.
Okay. So there's a reason why I sent this to you that we're going to get to in a minute. But once I got into it, I actually liked it more than I thought I was going to.
Well, I used to teach sociology
Yeah.
and anthropology, so some of the things in this article piqued my interest more than others. But I don't think it was a consistent message for the title.
And I agree that the title was somewhat misleading.
Yeah.
And so the title of the article is 3 Psychological Theories to Help You Communicate Better with Anyone.
Yeah.
And yet the theories don't really seem to be anything about that, right? No. So the first theory is Dunbar's number,
Right.
which I had heard of, but I am going to be honest, because I'm always honest. Well, no, I'm mostly honest.
Yeah.
I did not know what this was, and I thought it was something different.
I have trouble with that. I get caught in things like Occam's razor.
Uh-huh.
Is that this theory or is that some other theory? So I always just take the best choice that's available in the moment.
So Dunbar's number is this evolutionary psychologist that went through the onerous task of actually comparing the density or the projected.
Well, he would appeal to you because apparently he's a lot like you.
Yes.
He wants to do all this micro
Yeah,
research
yeah.
in comparing apes and monkeys and humans in terms of the size of their neocortex.
Right.
To
So
see
the
if he
thinking
can make
part of their brain.
pattern conclusions. That
But he
are-
did, and they were consistent.
And he came up with something called Dunbar's number,
Yeah.
which identified the pattern that his research says will tell how many people most of us can have connections with. What's our network?
And so here's the thing. So I've heard of Dunbar's number. I didn't know what it was, and I am being honest, I thought it was something else. But basically, he looked at the size of the neocortex, so the size of the thinking part of the brain. And if you look at that, he was able to reliably predict the social groupings, the size of the social grouping of the organism based on the neocortex. And it ended up being very consistent. So the larger the neocortex, the larger the social network.
So an anthropologist would tell you that that's a lot of effort for nothing because we already know that people develop hierarchically family, clan, tribe, nation. And so you identify the family, you identify the clan, you identify the tribe first in your sequence. And so, Dunbar says you have a maximum of 150 people that you can have in your network. I don't have a quibble with the number. I just quibble with the conclusion.
Well, so this is what really struck me, is that for all of my professional career, I have been telling people that it is really difficult to know more than 100 people, maybe 125 people at max. And I have had students, I've had other clinicians argue with me about that number. And they're like, how do you come to that? And I'm like, I just feel like that's about right.
So
I think about it.
Back, we used to close out arguments saying something like, well, that's the Peter principle. And people go, oh, is that so? You throw out that's Dunbar's number. It's not mine.
Well, now I'm going to. Now
Okay.
I'm going to.
Now you're going to. Okay.
Because but I did. So I'm saying, intuitively, I kind of feel like that you can't really keep in your mind the individual identities of more than 100 people, and that to then be able to say that you have intimate relationships with more than 100 people, I think is ridiculous, because I just don't think that the human brain has a capacity for that. And then this gives me actually the grounding and the explanation for why that might actually be true.
So I think you missed the whole point.
Okay.
I think you missed
I often do.
significant point of the article.
Yeah.
Because as I read it, what he said was, the more variety you have in the contacts that you have, the more broad range group of friends that you can go into and be accepted by, the more intelligent you are. The higher up on the intelligence scale you are as an organism, as an animal.
Oh, I missed that.
So my understanding is that
Now I'm reading the article again.
I'll read the article again. But my understanding is that the goal is to have a lot of variety, and not just to have 150 people that you know intimately, and feel safe among. But if you can feel safe among different groups of people, and I think the analogy or reference that he uses is, can you walk up to a group in a bar and have a drink with them and feel comfortable and not be on high alert?
Yeah, I read that.
Are you accepted by them? Are you acceptable to them? The greater variety of groupings to which you are accepted is an indication of your intelligence in the hierarchy of organisms.
Well, then that's another thing that I've always said intuitively that now I'm finding corroboration for, which is, I've always said, you can't ever tell me that you have an opinion until you have exposed yourself to the other side of the argument for at least some period of time. It doesn't have to be, right? So if I'm watching
so if
MSNBC,
I just watch Fox for 2 minutes, I'm good. I'm
no.
covered.
Now I would argue you need to expose yourself to the other opinion for at least 50% of the time that you expose yourself to the opinion you agree with.
And that's Michael's number?
I'm just making that up.
Oh, okay.
But no, I mean, I have made that up in the past. That's what I tell people, because
You got to have adequate exposure.
you got to, yeah. Because I don't care how dyed-in-the-wool liberal you are.
Right.
If you turn on Fox, there's going to be something that is presented there that you're going to say, oh, that kind of sounds logical. So if you let yourself.
So for me, that's possible when I watch the news shows during the height of the middle of the day. But in the evening and the early morning shows are so propagandistic that I can't.
But
do
those are opinion pieces. Those aren't news.
Well, I would agree.
I mean, those are the newsy equivalent of variety shows that are on the major networks.
Reality shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they get people that poll well in appearance and are willing to go on the air and say what the scripted thing is, not necessarily what they believe. And so those are just opinion shows. But if there were actually a legitimately well-researched conservative source of information and a well-researched liberal source of information, and you paid attention to both of them, you would find logical arguments in each.
So here's the quotation you were looking for in the article. Research shows that it is not the size, the sheer number of contacts maintained by a person that counts. Rather, it is the diversity of connections, the number of different types of people, units, expertise, technologies, and viewpoints that people can access through their networks. So I would agree with your conclusion that if you just watch MSNBC, you're in your limited exposure to thoughts and ideas and evidence and information upon which to make a decision.
I don't even know if all you do is expose yourself to one side of so if you expose yourself to one side of the argument, the psychological term for that is confirmation bias. If you do that, if you only allow yourself to be exposed to the side of the argument that you believe in, how can you say you're not brainwashed?
So would you extrapolate that argument to religious schools of thought? If I only go to my church and only believe or know what it teaches, then I may miss getting to heaven, because other churches might have different thoughts.
I don't know if I would say you miss getting into heaven. I would say that I've never applied it to religious organizations, but now to be consistent, I would have to say yes, I agree with that.
My wife used to run the senior high youth group at the church that we attend, which is an Episcopalian church. And they made a point to go to a Muslim church, a Catholic church, a Jewish synagogue, and take the kids and expose them to what those services were like. They did some preparation ahead of time. Then they had somebody from that community come and say, these are the ways that we believe, these
Yeah.
are the things that we do. So they would have exposure to different ideas
Right.
that would then encourage them to reinforce
Right.
their own growth process by thinking about
Yes.
some of these things instead of just swallowing it hook, line, and sinker as propaganda.
And I've been to temple a handful of times. I haven't been to a mosque, and the reason is because I don't know somebody who attends well enough to invite myself,
Yeah.
and I feel like it might be disrespectful to go without.
You don't want to do something
Yeah.
out of your ignorance
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would
yeah.
be offensive.
Yeah.
But I notice you have a Koran.
I do have a Quran,
Yeah.
and it's really hard to read because it's written backwards and from the back to the front.
Well, you need to get a translation.
I mean, it's in English, but it's still printed the
Yeah.
way that
they
the
would
Arabic
read it,
language
right.
was printed. And so for my Western trained brain, it feels really difficult to.
But that
Yeah.
supports the thesis that
Yeah.
if you expose yourself to different ideas from different locales,
Mm-hmm.
different orientations, you have a better chance of having an informed
Well,
decision.
and my theory of religion is that the three major religions, so Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, are really the same thing. And people would say that's sacrilegious, but they all derive from the original ancestor of Abraham and his bloodline, and all of the books, all of the text that they write about are all the same story. They're just different interpretations of the same story. And so I think that we've really missed an opportunity as a people to recognize that if we're all just children of Abraham, then we agree about more than we disagree about. And what we disagree about, we should be able to sit down and at least be willing to accept the other person's view if we don't say, yes, that's right. I just think we've really missed an opportunity with that.
If not accept, respect.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so when I read this article, like I said, I actually found some confirmation for some things that I already believed. But when I think about that, okay, hang on, let's go to our break, and we'll pick this up on the other side.
If you like Psych with Mike, here's a couple of ways that you could really help us out. You could subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok at Psych with Mike. But the two things that would really, really help us out is subscribing to us on YouTube, search Psych with Mike, but also going to Apple Podcasts and leaving us a review and a comment. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
Okay, we're back. And so what I was going to say is that before we went to the break is that when I think about how this idea of Dunbar's number applies to human communication, the reason that I've always talked about you can't know 100 people is because when my kids first got into social media, right? So this was back when AOL, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah,
AOL on
right.
They had some kind of messenger, and I don't remember
AOL,
what that was called.
America Online.
Yeah, but it was called something AOL. The very first, it wasn't a texting; it was an instant messaging service.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
And if you know what I'm talking about, you can send us a line and let us know. But I'm blanking on what that was called. But my kids had that, and my son would be doing his homework, and he would have this on in the background, and these things would pop up, and he'd be having conversations with people, and I would say, "Oh, who's that?" And he would say, "Oh, that's this person." And who's that? "Oh, that's this person." Yeah. I'd say, "You can't know these people. I mean, maybe you might know 5 of these people, and the rest of them are people that you've met in this electronic environment
Chat room.
who could be 50-year-old men."
Right.
And they're just saying that they're these people. I mean, how can you possibly know that?
I present myself as somebody to you as a new person. Hey, this is who I am. I could be somebody different in another room talking to another person.
Right. No, and so then once I recognized that maybe he didn't know all these people, I started to say, okay, you can only have people on your friend group that you can verify the identity of to me.
Okay.
And
well, as a parent.
Yeah, as a parent. Right. But then he said to me, well, I have 1,000 friends.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I ever thought, you can't have 1,000 friends. But social media presents this delusion, fixed false belief, this delusion that we know all of these people and we can't know these people. I think that social media has really watered down the quality of human interactiveness and replaced it with something that is a delusion, and I am afraid for what that is going to mean long term in our evolutionary psychology.
I would agree with you completely, and I would go further to say just mediated conversations. If we're talking over an instrument like a phone, if we're FaceTiming, if we're using a computer or whatever, instead of talking to a person. I mean, lately I've had any number of conversations with people that in their own home text their children or their husband or their wife, do you know where this is, do you know where that is, instead of going and find them and say, Mom, do you know where my this is or that? And it's just become so easy to do that,
right,
that it disrupts our interactive capacity with real people. And that hampers our relationships.
I can't tell you how many of my clients have said this to me, and I have responded, and I get a little heated when this, especially when it happens over and over again, but they'll want to show me a text and tell me this person is angry with me because they sent me this text. And I'll look at it and say, you don't know anything about what this person's intention is, because you can't, if only really 7 to 12% of all human communication is spoken verbal language, and everything else is nonverbals, you've missed 90% of the interaction,
right,
because you're not in the room with them. You can't imply anything, and then they'll say to me, well, look at the emojis. I'm stumped and I'm mystified.
Well, but it's technology's effort to get there.
But we are slowly,
so as a parent,
conditioning out of ourselves the ability to interpret and respond to nonverbal human behavior.
I don't think that'll work. I don't think we can condition that out of us. I think whenever we do have personal reactions, we'll still do that and interpret that feedback.
I don't know. You don't
I
think
it's inherent to the organism?
Well, okay, and I agree. But you don't think that if you don't practice it, you're going to inherently know how to do that well, even if you never get an opportunity to practice?
I don't know that any of us know how to do it well. I practice it, study it, try to figure out how to do it. Continuing your previous line of thought, as a parent, I remember requiring my son and any of his friends who were around to put their cell phones away at the dinner table. You can't have your cell phone out at the table. You can't text anybody. You can't read messages. We're having dinner and we're talking to each other. We're looking at each other. Boy, he fought that. He was so sneaky. He'd put in his lap and he'd lean back, and I'd catch him and be like, "Give me the phone." I would encourage other families to do similar things, to have non-mediated equipment times where they have to just interact.
So the very first phone that my son ever was able to text on was an old Motorola Razr phone. And if people don't know, those were like the coolest things in the world. They were flip phones, but they had a laser-etched keypad, and it was the first phone that he had a texting function on it. And he could.
Mine was a BlackBerry.
So these were numeric keypads, and so to do the
phone pad,
alphanumeric, you had to press certain keys multiple times to get the letter. And these kids were so adept, they could have those phones in their pockets, flip them open, and text actual messages. So they knew how to feel on the keypad where the key was. They knew how to press 3 times to get a D.
Type on a keyboard that was blind. When I took typing class in high school, there were no letters on the keys. They had one up on the wall that you could look at, but you had to learn where they were and have motor memory that would let you type without seeing the keys.
Well, I said to my son, if you would apply half of your energy into doing things that are good that you've put into this, imagine where you would be in life.
And then did you sound like your father talking to you?
Absolutely. And you know, when I was saying it, the whole time I was saying it, I was thinking to myself, don't say that. Stop saying that.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help it.
Stuff you promise yourself, when I have a child, I'll never say.
Yeah.
It comes out. Yeah.
So I don't know. I really am concerned about what this does to us as a species going forward. But you know what? We'll adapt. But I think that it's time to present the whole reason why why did I send this to you?
Because you wanted to be a better communicator.
Yeah, but because there was a line
picture
in
of a brain on
Yeah,
there.
no, you go ahead and tell them.
Well, you wanted me to see the thing from Hanlon's razor, which is a takeoff on Occam's razor. Never attribute to malice that which is adequately explained by stupidity. So, as I understand that, I'm not supposed to read a text from you or a message from you or hear a statement from you that sets me on fire and automatically assume that you intended to be provocative. You could just be stupid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so it also means
that Hanlon's razor is that I should consider your stupidity before I consider your meanness.
And the author of the article says that she actually substitutes stupidity for ignorance.
Yeah, but I like stupidity.
I do too.
Yeah.
But what it also means is that when we are exposing ourselves to really intense political content or anything else that's completely one-sided, what we can't assume is that what is being presented there is necessarily out of malice.
But I think it's too easy to just dismiss you by deciding you're an idiot. I heard the president say that about Dr. Fauci and scientists in general last night in the debate. And he said, wow, they're just idiots. I mean, so here's Hanlon's razor carried to an extreme.
Well, so the president would be dismissing Dr. Fauci as someone who was ignorant, but then the listener has to look at that and say, if I have to choose one, and I'm not saying the president's an idiot. What I'm saying is, does the president have as comprehensive an understanding of the coronavirus as Dr. Fauci?
Well, do I require that of the president? Because he has
no, I don't require it.
Like my mother. Do I listen to something my mother says and dismiss that because it's ignorant? Or is there potential malice behind it?
But what I'm saying is, I don't think that the president necessarily is acting out of malice.
So do you think it's out of ignorance?
I would assume so.
Those are the two options.
But then what I'm saying is that if I, as a consumer of that information, am exposed to that, so the president says, I think Dr. Fauci is an idiot, then as a consumer of information, I have to look at that and say, which person do I believe has more knowledge, intimate knowledge of the coronavirus? And if it's not the president, then I probably need to believe Dr. Fauci. And I don't have to believe that the president was doing that out of malice. I can say he may not have been well informed, but I'm going to choose to believe Dr. Fauci.
But what if you then heard another piece of reporting where the president said, and he said, I really like Dr. Fauci. I think he's a nice guy. I enjoy him. Does that change?
Well, then if he says both of those things in the same paragraph, then I have to say that doesn't seem to be logically consistent.
Do you?
I would say that.
Okay. So,
that doesn't appear to me to be logically consistent. Because those are conflicting phrases.
So then do you, when you are exposed to that level of dynamic tension, do you resolve it by saying, or cognitive dissonance, do you resolve it by saying, well, this person has a title or an authority, an order in the hierarchy that says I should just take it as a given, whatever they're saying?
No, this is what I do. I say, okay, I don't think that the president is speaking with logical consistency, and because I believe that Dr. Fauci actually has a more intimate knowledge of the infectious disease process, I'm going to choose to believe him. But I don't think the president is operating necessarily out of malice. I think the president is trying to do what he believes is right and good for the country. I think he wants people to feel good, safe, and secure I may disagree
Well, he's a positive psychologist.
with the way that he is presenting the information, but I don't ascribe it to malice.
Okay.
Or I don't necessarily have to ascribe it to malice.
That might make you a better person than some of us.
But I think that is the message that we are trying to convey, or at least that I'm trying to convey here, is that we don't have to ascribe to malice that which could be explained by ignorance. And if the president is trying to operate out of a place of concern,
that possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, before we make a conclusion, if we can slow ourselves down.
I think if you would, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think if you're being completely honest, you would be able to acknowledge that the president may actually be trying to do what he thinks is best for the country.
That would be a challenge for me.
Okay.
But not just based on that quotation.
Yeah. But that's what I would choose to believe, is that I think the president
I think he's
genuinely
trying to do what is best for his agenda. I don't know that his agenda
is best for the country. Has what's best for the country at heart.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That might be fair. All right, so we are going to close this down, and hopefully people found that at least entertaining, if not informative. I think there was a lot of good stuff in that.
I hope so.
Yeah. As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And if you would go to the internets and check out Apple Podcasts, find Psych with Mike there, leave us a comment and rate us. We would really appreciate that. That is very helpful for the show. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.